Hey friends, it's Jasmine from Jasmine's Astrology, but you can call me Jay. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be chatting a little bit about Mars. So I was looking at the Mars retrograde cycle, looking at the charts, looking to see what kind of transits Mars is going to be making throughout the coming months and trying to get a bigger picture understanding of what that cycle is maybe going to be all about. I do think it's going to be a bit of a doozy, so we'll definitely take a closer look in the coming weeks. But what I want to talk about today is the fact that Mars is actually about to enter its shadow period or its retro shade. And this is going to happen on October 5th when Mars reaches 17 degrees of Cancer. And the shadow period is beginning because 17 degrees is actually where Mars will travel all the way back to by February 23rd, 2025. So, this is kind of our clue or our nod that from October 5th and onwards, anything that Mars is signifying and symbolizing, both on a collective level and the individual scale, all of that stuff is now sort of up for revisiting because Mars is entering the area of Cancer and eventually Leo as well, where it's going to have to retrace its steps. And just like with a Mercury retrograde, this doesn't mean that we just put our whole lives on pause and that we don't do anything because we might have to tweak it or revise it later. But we go into this with the knowledge of okay, this Marsy thing that is happening over here might just be something that's ongoing for a while. Maybe I don't need to push so hard all at once. Or maybe I do need to keep pushing, but I need to learn how to do it in a more sustainable and maybe even softer way because that pushing is going to be going on for a while. Now, what really caught my eye about Mars hitting that retrograde degree, that shadow period degree, is an aspect that it's going to be making just the day after while it's still at 17 degrees. And that is a square aspect with Mars over at 17 degrees of Libra. And this stood out to me for kind of two reasons. The first being that a square with Mars tends to be one of the most technically challenging aspects in astrology because the square aspect is actually said to be of the nature of Mars. So it can be full of tension and friction. It can be really intense and bring a lot of heat and inflammation to a situation. And so we have an aspect that is of the nature of Mars and Mars being involved in it. So it just kind of jumps out as having this big Mars energy. And the second main reason the aspect popped out to me is that the degree of a planet's station, whether that is a retrograde or a direct station, those degrees tend to be the more pivotal points, the more potent points on the retrograde sort of timeline. Because, even when a planet is retrograde, at least there's movement happening. But when a planet is stationing, again, either retrograde or direct, it really is just paused. It really is just sitting and hovering and kind of being in this holding pattern. So there's something almost louder about the station degrees. And so, with all of those factors in mind, I see that Mercury Mars square on the 6th, and it makes me think something that happens in and around this day could have a much larger impact on the Mars retrograde overall. And unfortunately, difficult Mercury Mars combinations can be interpreted as something like words as weapons. It can relate to heated and volatile conversations, the raising of voices, being really sharp with our word choice, which of course sometimes can be super helpful because being very direct with our words and our language can help us to really get to the heart of the matter, really cut through any sort of BS and just get right to the point. But under the right conditions, that can come off as very harsh and cutting. There's an impatience and a heat, and that all mixed together can lead to uncomfortable results. Tempers are flaring, tempers can be short, and going on the defensive becomes all too easy. And with Mars in Cancer, there is a level of defensiveness that's kind of turned up. This is major mama bear energy, like actual mama bear in the wild protecting her cubs. If you come for the cubs, you're going to get it. So, in a larger sense, Mars in Cancer, this transit can be showing us where we feel raw and vulnerable and exposed, potentially unprotected and unsafe. And when we feel those emotions, there can be an impulse to put up a defense and even go on the attack, right? Especially when something that we love, something that we hold dear, something that is really tender, when that part of us or when those things in our lives feel threatened, it's easy to get defensive. And then we get this square aspect with Mercury, where some of that anger or defensiveness is coming through our communication, both internally and externally, and also in the decisions that we're making around this time, the actions that we're taking around this time. Mars is in tricky condition, and that can make for impulsive choices that are happening in the heat of the moment. We feel pushed, like we have to make a choice, even though we maybe don't have to, but we're feeling that pressure, like we just have to move forward with something. And in that moment, we're maybe not really thinking about the long-term consequences that these choices and actions and words can have. So, what I'm thinking we can look out for, what we can prepare for, is that heat, that friction, that charge that makes us want to verbally react in a sort of cutting, snappy, fiery way. Um, Feel that feeling, notice that feeling, and then do our best to stop ourselves, take a beat, and really consider like, is this worth yelling about? Do I maybe just need to like go scream into the ethers, into a pillow in order to like channel this energy up and out, but not direct it towards someone else or even towards the self? I mean, we might not be able to curb these impulses. Sometimes things are so, heated and in the moment, and it's difficult to make that breakaway from it. And sometimes this stuff just has to come up and out. I mean, it's maybe been boiling and bubbling inside of us, and now it's just overflowing. But I do think that we can potentially find more productive ways of using that fire, of like expelling that heat and that fire. Arguments aren't totally avoidable and they're not always bad. Having a heated discussion can sometimes move things that have been stagnant. But when it gets into just like screaming and saying things we might regret, it's like, where do we draw the line? And finding some kind of outlet for these spicier emotions, spicier thoughts is good practice too, especially like if we're in a more internally mentally agitated space, like if we find ourselves having really intense thought patterns, we're stewing over something, there's just a churning in our mind, we're thinking about things that we wished we'd said or didn't say, choices we wish we'd made or didn't make, ruminating until we're just in this spiral that's super unhelpful. So, no doubt, sometimes we just got to find ways to get all of this up and out of us. But under this kind of aspect, it's absolutely worth a shot to try and exercise some caution because there is a chance here that we're going to say something we regret. And then not only does that suck in the moment, it might suck for a while because, again, this aspect could signal something that is going to be sticking around until at least February 2025 and like late February 2025. So, as much as Mars would like to be quick, say the thing, make the choice, take the action, it would probably benefit us and Mars to try and slow down, take a beat, really consider that next step because the outcome or consequence of what we do next could last much longer than just a day or two. Like we could find ourselves in an argument that lingers for 4 months. With a square aspect, there's typically some kind of adjustment that needs to be made. There's this like clashing of energies, differing opinions and needs are butting heads, and something's got to give, something's got to budge so that life can keep moving, So we might have to consider who and what we're willing to compromise for and who and what we're not willing to compromise for. And I think that in itself can be really valuable information. Okay, I know that's not the most fun news to hear as we close out a week that already gave us an eclipse and we head into the weekend just looking for something more chill. But I think it's better to be prepared than scared. Shit happens, but maybe knowing the upcoming astro weather helps shit to happen less, or it becomes easier to clean up, or we remember to bring an umbrella that can help shield us from the shit. And the good slash more positive news is that just 2 days after this tricky square, both Mars and Mercury are going to move on to form trine aspects with our two most beneficial and supportive planets. So that's definitely a mood lifter. And I think both of those aspects are also going to play into some longer term transits. So stay tuned because I will be back in just a couple of days to talk more about both of those trine aspects and how we can expect them to sort of foreshadow or say something more about some other upcoming longer term transits. But that's all I've got for this video. I hope it has been helpful, not too much of a downer. Such is life, right? Such is astrology. Let me know in the comments if you have navigated a difficult Mercury-Mars aspect in the past, or how this Mars in Cancer transit has been treating you so far. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoy my content or find it helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe. It's super helpful and it's super free. And I will be back with more astrology insights and other cosmic chit chat very, very soon. But until then, I'll catch you in the cosmos.